It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. Today we have a fascinating guest, someone who I'm looking forward to having him on. Melvin Dummar. You might remember him from the movie. I think it was called Melvin and Howard. Fascinating guy who he ran into Howard Hughes, and Howard Hughes put him in his will. So we're going to hear this whole story today. I think an iconic figure, really a historical legend. Melvin Dummar. Melvin, are you there?
I am here.
Thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
So Melvin, give us an idea how all this got started. First of all, who were you before you ran into Howard Hughes? What were you like?
Well, I actually, before I met Howard Hughes, I was working in a mine, a magnesium mine in Gabbs, Nevada. And in December of 67, on the 27th of December of 67, I had a motorcycle accident, and I was my face was all scarred up and everything. And so I went to the hospital in Hawthorne, and when I got out of the hospital, they told me to take a couple of weeks off, and I was going to Southern California to try to get back with my ex-wife who had run off, and she was at her mother's place in Southern California. So on the 29th of December, I started heading toward L.A., and just south of Lida Junction on Highway 95. I was about 5 miles from a brothel called the Cottontail Ranch, and it was at night. It was around midnight, and I pulled off the road to relieve myself, and I found what I thought at first was a dead body, and I was contemplating going and getting the sheriff, but then I see him trying to get up or move. So I was totally relieved that, whoever it was wasn't dead. And so I went over and helped him up, put him in my car, and asked him if I could take him to a doctor or a hospital or go get the sheriff or whatever. And he refused. The only thing he said, he wanted to go to Las Vegas. And so I told him, well, I'm going down through that way, so I'd be glad to take you to Las Vegas. So I took him down to Las Vegas. And during the ride, we talked about different things. Once he warmed up, he was about froze to death, and so it took him a while to get his self together. And when we started talking, he was more curious about who I was and what I was doing and where I was going. And so I told him, and I don't know, I took him into Las Vegas and dropped him off behind the Sands Hotel. He told me who he was on the way, and because I mentioned I was trying to get a job after I got out of the Air Force with different aircraft companies, and I'd applied at Hughes Aircraft, and that's when he told me that he was familiar with it, that he owned Hughes Aircraft, that he was Howard Hughes, and I thought he was some kind of a kook or a vagrant of some sort. So I didn't put much stock in the fact that he told me that he was Howard Hughes, and then I dropped him off behind the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas and went on to California.
How old were you at the time?
I was 23, and Hughes was 63, I believe.
At that time, no one had heard the stories about Howard Hughes looking like a bum, though, right?
Yes.
So that's kind of unique to your story, that you knew he was looking all disheveled, where the average person didn't know that.
Yeah, he actually, he had kind of, long hair, shoulder-length hair, and he had a scruffy beard, and, he was relatively thin, tall and thin, and, I just thought he was a wino or a bum. That's what I thought he was.
Now, why did you drop him off in the back of the Sands and not at the front?
Well, he told me that's where he wanted to go, and when I At that time in Las Vegas, you could pull right off of Las Vegas Boulevard, what they call the Strip, and pull into the front of the casinos, which I started to do. And he acted like he panicked and he didn't want to go there. He wanted to go around back. And I found out later that he wanted me to go quite a ways away from the building and the backside of the building. And there was some low-lying, like covered patio or what do you call carport type things in a building back there. And I found out later that was his personal private secretary, Nadine Henley's office. And maybe that's why he wanted to go there. He was actually staying in the Desert Inn, which was right next door to that. And that's where he was residing at the time. But, I had no idea why he wanted to go there or what, but that's where he wanted to go. So that's why I took him and dropped him off.
Okay, but you didn't believe it was really Howard Hughes.
No, I like I said, one thing too, when he got out of the car, I pulled up, he asked me if I had any money, and that was another reason I thought he was a bum. And so I just said, well, I got a little bit, and so I gave him some change. And he thanked me, and he seemed to be moving okay when he got out of the car and he walked away, and then I drove off, and so I didn't see him again.
Okay, and then the next thing that happened was what happened? You got a will in the mail or something?
No, it was I think it was 9 years later when he passed away, and he. One of the guys that worked for him, named Levain Forsythe, apparently he drafted a holographic will and had different people holding it for him. And right a couple of weeks after he passed away, Levain Forsythe, who was then living in Alaska, flew down and brought the will to me. And for what reason, I have no idea, because it was addressed to the president of the Mormon Church. Of course, the president that it was addressed to had passed away, and there was a new president of the church at the time, of the Mormon Church, but it was addressed to him. And so when I first received it, I thought somebody was playing a cruel joke on me, and I didn't know if it was real or what. So since it was addressed to the president of the Mormon Church, I was living in Willard, Utah, which is only about an hour's drive away from Salt Lake, where the headquarters of the Mormon Church was. I took it to the Mormon Church, and I tried to get in to see the then acting president, Spencer Kimball, and they wouldn't let me. They said he was in a meeting with the governor of Texas, and so I just left it on a desk and went home.
Because you thought it was a joke, like if.
Well, it scared me because, when I first got it, I was so curious to, what it was and why it was brought to me that I actually steamed it open and read it, and it scared the living daylights out of me, when I seen my name in it.
Well, but still, you must have been pretty excited, though, right?
No, actually, yeah. I was petrified because the first thing when I read it, I didn't know if it was a cruel joke, but the first thing that popped in my mind is that if this is real, there is no way in God's green earth that I would ever see a penny of it, because the first thing popped in my mind was a federal government. They would not want a will probated because they want their greedy hands in there to take all the inheritance money they can. And little did I know that that was the case. And then the state of Texas and the state of California and everybody else was jumping on the bandwagon, and all the relatives. And so, it was like, somebody like me, I didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of ever seeing anything, and I never did. In fact, I'm the only person or entity that was named in the will that never got a thing.
Because other people named in that same will did get money.
Oh, yes. Practically everybody, everything that was named in there, even with the flying aircraft, the Spruce Goose that he called his Hercules airplane, the city of Long Beach ended up with that and had it for, I don't know, on display for 20 years. And the other only person that was named other than me, by name in it was William Lummis, who was a cousin of Hughes's, and he is the one that ended up with the bulk of the estate.
Before we get into too much detail, before we get into too much detail on the story, the movie Melvin and Howard, what did you think of that? Was that an accurate portrayal?
No, they kind of Hollywoodized that. It was, first of all, I was driving a car, not an old pickup truck. I don't know how Howard Hughes at that time got out where he was, but I don't believe he was riding a motorcycle. But when I talked to Bo Goldman when he was writing his screenplay, since I'd had a motorcycle wreck a couple of days before that, I guess he thought that would be a good way to put Hughes out into the desert. And I must have looked like a freak to Hughes because my face was just one big scab when I picked him up. And I was driving a 66 Chevrolet Caprice at the time when I picked him up, and not a pickup like the movie had. Even though some of it was kind of comical and did happen, like the song that Paul and Matt sang called "Santa's Souped Up Sleigh."
Yeah.
I wrote that song, but in the movie they messed it up because they had two songs that I wrote, and they put them together as if they were one, and it didn't make any sense at all. And I didn't like that, because the other one was "I don't care who you are, fat man, get your reindeer off my roof." Because I write a lot of songs and stuff, and but "Santa's Souped Up Sleigh," that there's the main song that has got a lot of exposure and stuff.
Yeah, I can still remember the song. That was a great movie. Now, did you make any money from the movie?
No.
Really?
I should have, but in the contract that I signed in the beginning to the attorneys I got before the movie even came out, I signed a contract with them where they were going to act as agents for me, and they were supposed to take 10% of the proceeds, from the movie, and I was supposed to get 90%. Well, they flipped that around, and the attorneys took 90%, and I got about 10% of what we got. And so I wasn't really happy about that either. And I tried to get attorneys to sue the attorneys for that for the movie, and I couldn't even find another attorney that would sue the attorneys.
Where did you hire that attorney? In Vegas or Utah?
In Utah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm down here in Vegas myself, so I kind of understand the way things work out here. Everybody has their hand in your pocket, Now, the will that you were named in, was that the only will that was ever in existence?
I think that's the only one that they actually took halfway seriously, and that they tried to probate, because after that there was, I don't know how many wills. There was some of them, they were just absolute jokes, about, Donald Duck witnessed it, and, things like that. I mean, it was just really stupid stuff that people, I know that were writing, and it didn't make any sense at all.
So they got a copy of the will here on Wikipedia under your name. Now, this will here that mentions all these people at the Hughes Medical Institute and the University of Texas, the Boy Scouts of America, Gene Peters, all those people got money?
Well, if you'll read some of the things like William Lummis, or not William Lummis, is Bill Gay, who was running the Summa Corporation at the time. Look at it, his obituary and stuff. Major contributor, Boy Scouts of America, the Mormon Church. There's a ranch out there outside of Vegas, Glendale. That was given to the Mormon Church. I think they said they sold it to them. I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of acres it was, but they said they didn't actually give it to them. They charged them $1 for it. And there's even people that, like a lady that said she was married to Hughes, and I don't think she ever was. Terry Moore, she even got money from the Hughes estate. That they settled, gave her something like $350,000 or something, just because she claimed she was married to him once, and which she never could produce any real evidence, that she was. But and of course, Gene Peters and his other wife, what was her name, Ella. I think they got money from the Hughes estate anyway, regardless. And the Hughes Medical Institute, Bill Gay and William Lummis, they were shortly after, they were on the board of directors of the Hughes Medical Institute, and they were spending money like us, going out of style. That a lot of the money went to the Hughes Medical Institute. And I've done a little research myself, and I've seen where the University of Nevada and California and Rice University, all of them got some money from out of the Hughes estate.
Now, did you make any attempts to collect on the will?
Did I?
Yeah.
Well, other than the fact that Harold Roden, who was an executive or we call it
executor,
not the executor, but a substitute executor of the will. He tried to, he went into court trying to probate it, but the jury, because nobody would come forward, 30, 40 years ago and tell, about Hughes and stuff, and which they have now, but then nobody'd say anything. So I don't know. They lost in court, and I think one of the big things too, the state of Texas, when we were going to court in Las Vegas, the state of Texas had a trial at the exact same time in Texas, and so all the witnesses that was in Nevada, none of them could show up. Be in two places at one time. So immediately before the trial in Nevada was over, Texas found the will to be invalid. Of course, that was plastered all over the news, and the jury, I'm sure they heard about it, that Texas had declared it invalid. And so I think that was undue influence on the Nevada jury, but there was nobody that actually was there fighting for it or appealing it in Texas. And the judge in Texas said he didn't recognize the Nevada courts at all, which I think is kind of a messed up situation, having two trials over the same thing going on in different states and then not recognizing one another. And so.
Now, you had a lawyer representing your interests?
Representing my interests? Oh, yeah. Well, in Nevada, I don't know about Texas. I don't even know what they had going on down there, other than I was trying to follow the trial down there. Of course, they'd subpoenaed me in Nevada first, and so I didn't go to Texas. Never did.
Okay, but you had a lawyer representing you in Vegas.
Yes.
Now, were you paying that lawyer, or he was working on a contingency?
He was working on contingency, and that's one of the reasons why they took all the money from the movie, is because even though it wasn't in the contract, they said they had a lot of expenses, so they decided they'd just take all the money from the movie to pay some of their expenses. Of course, I was paying all my own expenses, running back and forth to the different proceedings myself, but that was over and above, whatever they took from the movie.
Now, did you have a really good law firm handling this, or was it just somebody you found? You know what I mean?
Apparently not. The law firm I had representing me was a local one out of Utah, actually.
Okay.
But they worked in coordination with Harold Roden, who his name that was named in the will, the executor. He appointed Harold Roden the substitute, Noah Dietrich. I think his name.
So now, out of all these people that were in this will, besides yourself, you were pretty much the only one. You were kind of accused as being like forging the will, though, weren't you?
Oh yes, yeah. They tried to accuse me. They tried to accuse my aunt, my wife, my kids, anybody that had anything to do with me or that even knew me. They would go and question them or drag them to court. I had one of my aunts named Bonnie, or well, that wasn't her given name, but that's what she went by. Since she'd worked for Millionaire magazine before my uncle ever married her. They tried to accuse her of writing it and saying there was a big plot, trying to get Hughes' money, and I never even mentioned anything to her, before Hughes died or anything, because my uncle had just married her. And in a lot of the news reports, I think they have her confused with my wife, Bonnie. It was a mess.
Now, so like a whole bunch of like private investigators and lawyers and stuff came out of the woodwork coming after you?
Most of them, I don't think they were coming after me. They were hired by Summa Corporation or the relatives to try to discredit to me and my family and everybody that was associated with me. To make us all out to be, wanted crooks or something, but we didn't have the money to hire a lot of investigators and stuff at the time. So I don't think that our side did a lot of investigating at all.
What, when you hear this story, it's so frustrating to think about, all this money slipped away, and you'd think that they would have given you a little chunk of money just to shut you up and send you on your way,
Well, the one time I didn't see him, but I was right shortly after the will came out. I was at a bishop of Mormon Church. His name was Gay Pettengill, and I was at his house, and he lived right down the street from me. And actually, an ABC News team was at his house, and we were doing an interview, and the Bill Gay apparently come to the door of Gay Pettengill and asked for me, and he told him that I was being interviewed by ABC Television. They said he just took off in a hurry, and I never heard from him again. So I don't know why he was there, or if it was actually him or what, because I didn't see him. But that's what the bishop of the church said. It was his home, and he answered the door and talked to him for a few minutes, and he came back, and he said that Bill Gay just took off.
But other than that, your lawyers were never approached with an offer of settlement?
I don't think so.
It's just amazing. Okay, now so how did this all turn out? After you lost the case in Texas and Las Vegas, that was it?
Well, that was it. But then the investigator, Gary Magnuson, the FBI, retired FBI agent, he started investigating because I used to work with his brother, and for about 15 years, and I didn't even know about Gary, but he has a brother named Dean Magnuson, and he told his brother he ought to talk to me, and so he came up, and of course this is I think about 2005, 2006, I don't know, and so he wrote he asked me about what went on, and I told him different things that I knew, and I actually told him, I said, I don't really care whether you believe me or not, but this is what happened, this is what went down, and so just check it out for yourself. And so he did, and he started finding out that what I told him was absolutely true, and so he wrote a book called The Investigation, and because of that book, there was an attorney, Stuart Stein, in New Mexico, decided he wanted to try to appeal it. And so I told him that, if they wanted to, I'd just go along with it. And so he filed an appeal, and we went to the was it the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals in Denver is where we ended up at. Of course, we went to Nevada, and they told us they wouldn't look at it. In Utah, they wouldn't look at it. So we went to Denver to the Court of Appeals, and they made a big joke out of it. A couple of the attorneys the judges that was there in Denver at the Court of Appeals, when we first went in there, one of the judges just started laughing out loud. Oh, ha, 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 this is so funny. They ought to make a movie about this. Oh, I think they did. It's called Howard and Melvin or something like that. Oh, this is such a big joke. And they wouldn't even listen to it. They wouldn't even listen to the evidence, what we were trying to do or anything, and so they threw it out of court too.
Okay, that's because in 2005, this retired FBI agent, Gary Magnuson, began investigating your claims. Now, how was he able to go back 30 years, to the 70s? What did he do? Locate witnesses? What was his course of investigation?
Well, he did. He found there's a guy that said that he'd Bob Darrell, so he checked him out. He's a pilot. Said that he took Howard Hughes to the Cottontail Ranch the same night that I picked him up, and he said that Hughes disappeared from there, and he didn't know what happened to him. And Bob Darrell was working for Hughes. He was running the North Las Vegas airport for Hughes at the time, and he's a very well-respected person and pilot and everything, and he says he's the one that took him there, and he didn't know what happened to him, where he went, because he just disappeared out of the Cottontail. And where I found him was about 5 miles, down the road from the Cottontail. But I think somebody took him from the Cottontail Ranch, gave him a ride, and hit him in the head, because when I found him, he had blood all over the side of his face and on his shirt, and I think somebody took him down the road and just dumped him. And apparently they took him from the Cottontail Ranch. So, and then of course there's a whole bunch of other people that started calling and saying that the big thing that why we lost the case in the jury in Vegas said that we didn't have any evidence that Hughes ever left the Desert Inn in the 4 years he was there. And now there's about 8 or 10 people, and a lot of them were one of them I was talking to was I talked to myself was a sheriff detective for Clark County, and he said that he was driving a car with the ex-governor of Nevada, O'Callahan, and this other guy named Huckabee, who apparently was on the Nevada Gaming Commission. He said, and he was actually driving the car, and they went and picked Hughes up, and he said, so he knows Hughes came out of the Desert Inn because he was with him, and with the governor of Nevada and the guy from the Gaming Commission. And that's kind of interesting, because Hughes is the only person that ever got a gaming license up to that point that had never appeared before the Gaming Commission. He had a way of getting around that with little bribe money and whatever he was doing. But
so and what else did the FBI agent come up with?
Well, he talked to the Beverly Harrell, who owned the Cottontail Ranch. Her and her husband was Howard Harrell. Beverly passed away, but he did talk to his husband, or Beverly's husband, Howard Harrell, and he told him that he knew about Hughes being there, and about notes that his wife would keep on important clientele, and then there's a couple of other people that said that he knew that he'd been there. In fact, I even talked to one of the girls that used to work there with this girl that they said Hughes would always want to see, that they referred to as Sonny. And I talked to one of the girls that worked there at the Cottontail, and she said that she knew about him too, that, he'd come in there, and they all thought he was a doctor of some sort. He'd come in there and tell them his name was Johnson, and he'd always carry a little medical kit type, briefcase. And so, this girl that worked with her, she went by the trick name of Marilyn, she said that every time when Hughes would come there, he would ask for her because he liked her best, but she knew who he was. So, and there's other people that say they saw Hughes, outside the Desert Inn, that, and he bought a lot of mining claims and everything. And a couple of those people I've talked to that, one of them that was involved in procuring a lot of these mining claims, Johnny Myers, I talked to him and he called me on the phone. Apparently Gary talked to him also, that he apologized to me. He said he knew about Hughes picking me, or that I picked Hughes up way before he died, because he told him in person. And Johnny Myers, I know, had a lot of dealings with Hughes. And he apologized to me. He said he was afraid to come forward, when the trial was going on, because the government was after him too for tax evasion. And he's up in Canada, and he said he'd never step foot back in the United States because the government says he owes him $7 million in taxes. And he said Johnny Myers told me he never made $7 million in his lifetime, so he wasn't coming back to the United States because he wasn't going to pay $7 million because he never made that much in his whole lifetime. That's what he told me. But so I don't know. And there's other people that told me that they'd met with Hughes outside the Desert Inn during that period, but nobody came forward during the trial. Everybody said they were like me. They were afraid. They were afraid of the repercussions and stuff. So,
gotcha. Oh, okay. Here today with Melvin Dummar, legendary figure, legendary guy, iconic figure. It was in the book, in the movie Melvin and Howard, and just recently had a book written about him by former FBI agent Gary Magnuson. The investigation, a former FBI agent uncovers the truth behind Howard Hughes, Melvin Dummar, and the most contested will in American history. So, Melvin, you're still there, right? Did I lose you? Melvin? We lost Melvin. Let me call him back. Okay, we lost Melvin for a second here. Okay, come right back up. Let's see, coming up. Oh, we've got some big shows coming up this week.
Hello.
Hey, Melvin, I lost you.
What do we do? Get cut off?
Yeah, I guess so. I thought maybe the Howard Hughes' henchman came and got you. Took you out again. But we're back on the air now. So let me ask you a quick question. Now, you went back to court in this time Colorado. You went to appeal the first ruling. Now, this time, did you have a good legal team with you this time?
Well, Stuart Stein was about the only attorney that was actually representing us. He had a couple of other attorneys helping him that I'm not really familiar with. But they were some out of Salt Lake and stuff. But they weren't. It wasn't I don't think Stuart Stein was a really high-powered attorney or anything by no means, but I thought he was a very good attorney. It's just that the judges and stuff, I don't think they even looked at what we were trying to do is trying to go back on the two of the people who benefited the most from the Hughes estate and charge them with fraud, and the statute of limitations on fraud, it runs 3 years from the time you discover the fraud and not from the actual event. And they didn't even consider that. And it was well within that 3-year time period when we found out, some of the things that they'd pulled and found the evidence that we thought we needed to show that Hughes was indeed out where I found him and picked him up at.
So you never actually got any kind of trial or anything. It was pretty much dismissed even before you got started.
What was that? I couldn't hear you.
Yeah. Did the trial ever get started, or it was dismissed before it even got started?
It was aborted before it even got started. They wouldn't listen. I mean, it did about 5 minutes, and they just said that it was over. They wouldn't even consider it. They felt that it was fairly litigated, 30 years ago or whatever.
Wow. They never give you a chance, huh? What about, did you ever have any kind of physical threats or intimidation upon your personal life throughout all this?
I'm getting a hard time getting the reception here.
Really? Okay.
What was that again?
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I got this up as loud as I can. Let me see if I can make it a little louder for you. Did you ever receive any personal, physical threats or intimidation or anything like that against yourself?
Oh yes, I did. I had several people threaten me and telling me, that don't be surprised if somebody blows my car up with me in it, and I had a couple of people pull guns on me demanding money, that they thought I'd got, and people with knives and everything else, and it was a kind of almost like a nightmare for a while, because it even though it scared me somewhat, but I had to actually disarm a couple of people and with the knives and guns and everything else, because they were crazy.
Now, when was this? This was early on when the will first came out?
Yes, early on, just actually while we were going to court and just right after the.
Okay?
Sorry about that. I dropped the phone.
That's okay. I thought that came after you again. Every time I lose you, I get worried about you, Melvin.
Oh, yeah, it was right shortly after the court proceedings and stuff. I mean, I think people, because of the news media, they just assumed that I got millions of dollars, and they were wanting part of it. So that's what a lot of it was. People coming and demanding, that I give them money and whatever, and so it wasn't a pleasant time of my life.
But do you think that any of these
knew who was coming after me?
Is it possible that any of these attacks were coming from the opposition in the lawsuit?
I have no idea.
Okay. Now, you seem to have come into contact with a lot of the people around you over the years. What about Bob Mayhew? Did you ever get in contact with him?
No, all I seen was just things that he'd say about me, and I read the book that he wrote, but I just that he I seen him on a couple of interviews where he was talking about the case and everything, but I never did meet him. The only one that I ever really met that had anything to do with this, I did meet Noah Dietrich when we was going to trial there in Las Vegas and talked with him for a while, but other than that, I never met Mayhew or even Bill Gay or any of those people.
Well, then, Dietrich, what was the conversation like with Dietrich?
What?
What was the conversation like with Dietrich?
I don't know if I ought to tell you. Dietrich was supposedly fired by Hughes, years ago. Well, the story that he told was that him and Hughes, they hated paying taxes to the government. Well, Dietrich said that when he wanted to retire after 2 years of working for Hughes, that Hughes had promised him a lot of money, when he retired. Well, but they didn't want to give it to the government. They didn't want it to all be taxed. So they devised a plan that Hughes would what do you call it? Slander in public, and then they'd sue one another, defamation of character, and then they'd settle out of court, and settlement, then it wasn't taxable. So whatever the money he got, and Dietrich actually won the case, and so he got his money, and they didn't have to pay taxes, and income tax or anything. And I thought kind of a neat plan that they devised, and so but the news media and everything, they always reported as Dietrich was mad at him and fired him and everything. Well, it was part of the part of the plan, according to Dietrich.
And he told you that when you guys were hanging out at the courthouse for this litigation?
Do what?
He told you that story when you two met at the courthouse over the litigation?
It was one of the days right after the court proceedings was over, and we went back to a room with Harold Roden and Dietrich, and we just had a kind of a little conversation, after the one day that we were at the court, because Dietrich was only there, I think, a couple of different days and stuff, but and it was after the court proceedings. So one day we just all met in a room and talked about the case, and so that was his reason why he wasn't employed with Hughes, because he was, and he said that he did say that he's the one that actually built the Hughes empire, because if it was up to Hughes, he said Hughes would have bankrupted himself, but no, Dietrich is the one that held everything intact and advised him and invested his money for him and everything. And so, but no, Dietrich said that he never did get much credit for doing that, because everybody thinks it was all Hughes. But Dietrich said that Hughes was a very poor money manager and stuff. And Dietrich was an accountant, and he was his personal accountant for like 32 years, and before he decided he was a little bit older than Hughes, and he wanted to quit. He wanted to retire, and so
now getting back to the car ride with Hughes. Now you gave him the car ride, and then you found out about the will 9 years later, correct?
Boy, I'm telling you, I'm on a cell phone, and that's why I can't understand what you're asking sometimes.
Okay, well, yeah, I apologize for that. I hope it's recording good. I think it is, because all the levels seem good here. But my question is that, okay, you were in the car ride with Howard Hughes, and then you found out about the will 9 years later.
Yes.
Now, did you remember 9 years previous giving this guy a ride? How did you put two and two together?
Well, actually, it's not every day that you find somebody along the highway that you think is dead. I mean, and that kind of sticks out in your mind. And then it's not every day that you find that claims they're Howard Hughes. Of course, I didn't know that much about Hughes, but I had heard about him, and mainly it was just because of the Hughes aircraft and stuff. But I didn't know, everything that he was involved in, but, and of course, living in Nevada and him being in Nevada, just about everybody had heard about him. So,
okay, that's fair enough.
And then too, right after I picked him up that same day when I got to California, I was talking with my ex-father-in-law, and he's one of the first people I told about it. Named Wayne Sisk, and I told him about, hey, guess who I picked up on the way down here? This old kook that said he was Howard Hughes. And he gave me a bad time. He told me, he said, well, why in the heck didn't you take a picture of him? Because nobody's seen him for 15 years, So it just, and then, over the years, I told, when, it didn't come up too often, but every once in a while somebody would mention it. And so it was kind of, something that I forgot for sure.
Now, what do you think would motivate Howard Hughes to want to put you in his will if he only met you that couple hours?
Well, I have no idea why he named me in his will. And that's the one thing that kind of scared me, is because, I never asked him for anything, and I didn't expect anything from him. But I did. I'm quite confident that I did save his life that night. But other than that, I don't know why he left me in his will. I didn't ask him for it.
That's true. You pretty much did save his life.
Of course, with Gary's investigation, part of the things that he investigated is, the location I picked him up, and it's interesting that right at that particular time and where I found him, Hughes had just made options and stuff on the mining claims right on that very road that I picked him up. And he also checked with the National Weather Service that particular night. At the time when I picked him up, it was 29 degrees there, and Hughes was semi-conscious. I mean, I thought he was totally dead, but he was laying right on the ground in the middle of a dirt road, right off the highway, and I think he would have froze to death if he'd have stayed there very much longer. Died of hypothermia. So, being 29 degrees, and he didn't have a coat on or anything. He just had a long sleeve shirt on and just pants, but he didn't have a coat or hat or anything like that. So, I don't think he would have lasted, the rest of the night, because it probably would have got colder than that. It was below freezing, but. And then, he wasn't that strong of a man anyway. He was pretty frail. So,
was Gary able to come up with a reason why he was dumped there?
No, he just thinks that, well, Bob Darrell says that he disappeared from the Cottontail Ranch, and that he didn't know where he went, and that he actually had went into the kitchen area of the Cottontail Ranch where Beverly told him to take a nap, while Hughes carried out his business. And he said he actually fell asleep. And when they came and woke him up, he said, well, where's my friend at? And they said, oh, he left. He left quite a while ago. And he said, oh, where'd he go? And nobody knew where he went. And so he doesn't know if somebody from the Cottontail Ranch picked him up. I don't think that he could have walked that far, but so somebody had to have picked him up and taken him, to where he was. And whether it was somebody, whether he went out to the highway and caught a ride, or whether somebody from the Cottontail Ranch took him there or what. But I don't know.
Did the pilot ever describe another occasion where Hughes would just wander off?
Hughes was quite well known for wandering off from places.
Okay.
He disappeared several times during his life, from what I hear.
Okay. Well, okay, we're getting down toward the end of the show. We got about 5-6 minutes left. What would you like to leave us with?
Well, I'd like to tell people, about this new book that Gary Magnuson has written. It's called Stolen Justice, and there's a few things in there that I didn't even know about, and I think it's a pretty good book. He talks about all of the evidence behind, what he's come up with, and different witnesses and everything. And if people are curious and would like to know, I think that would be a good book for them to read. It's called Stolen Justice, and it's by Houdini Publishing. I think Houdini Publishing is right there in Las Vegas too. So
yeah, as a matter of fact, I know the owner of Houdini Publishing, and I got to tell you something else. They're very thorough about checking out the books that they publish, and he's a very thorough guy. He owns a radio station here in town as well that we're supposed to be getting carried on. So I got to give you that endorsement, and also my friend Vito Colucci had his book published by Houdini Press as well. I was going to use him for my book. But I self-publish because I'm on the radio. I can sell books all day long. But let me ask you a question. Gary, you think you can't get Gary to come on the show?
I don't know. He probably would. He's living up in St. George. I don't know if you knew where he was, but
I sent him a couple emails. I tried to get a hold of him. I couldn't get him. Never got a response from him. But we'll give it another shot if you can help put me in touch with him. Because I think this is a fascinating story. So the new book is called Stolen Justice. It's out by Houdini Press. I'll have a link to that on the Opperman Report Blogspot blog, and also to on OppermanReport.com in the bookstore. And also the original book, we'll have a link to that too, called The Investigation. A former FBI agent uncovers the truth behind Howard Hughes, Melvin Dummar, and the most contested will in America. We'll even have a link to the video. Melvin and Howard. Maybe you'll get a penny from that, right? If we sell a couple of those videos, you'll get 10% of. Oh my God! Was there a book on that, or just went straight to movie?
Well, You know what? I personally, I think I would really love to find a publisher and write my own book, because there's a couple of things that, that's not even mentioned in some of these books that's out. Of course, there's been about 100 different books that talk about me, and most of them, are just saying that I'm a liar and a crook and stuff. But it's people that have never met me, never talked to me, never investigated anything. So I would actually like to write my own book and have it published, but I don't really know any publishers or anything. And
well, nowadays, if you write the book, you can self-publish on CreateSpace. It goes right up on Amazon, and you get to keep like 90% of the money too. With these publishers, they keep most of their money, and it's pretty easy to get. You're a good interview, you're easy to talk to. So going self-publishing through CreateSpace, it's very effective these days.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll send you a link on Facebook.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Mr. Melvin Dummar. I tell you, I love that movie when I was a kid. I was probably still in high school the first time I saw the movie, and I just thought it was such a charming story, and it's a pleasure to get to meet you, my friend. What a life. So what did you do after all this? What was your life like after all this?
Yeah. One thing that kind of cracked me up about the movie, I was watching a talent show not too long after it was out. They called Eugene Jeleznik. I think it was out of Salt Lake. And there was a little kid on there trying to sing Santa's Sleigh. And after he sang what he knew of it, he said, well, where did you hear that song? Did you write it? And the little kid said, no, I learned it from watching Melvin and Howard.
Hey, so now what happens when people meet you at the supermarket or in the bank or something like that? When you say your name, they must recognize the name, right?
Not so much anymore. I mean, 30, 40 years ago, right when it first happened, I had people recognize me and talk to me all over the United States because I did a lot of traveling and stuff. I mean, people would walk up to me in Chicago or New York or Texas or wherever I happened to be. And, after the trial and everything, they'd be, oh, God, wasn't you the guy that was on TV, or wasn't you the guy in the newspaper? And some of them would even come up to me and they'd say, oh, I know you. You're that Jeffrey Dahmer guy, aren't you? And I'd say, no, guess again.
That's a good one, man. Okay, Mr. Dummar, thank you so much for coming on, okay? And if there's a new development, hit me up. Let me know what's going on. If you ever get that money, I'm your friend. Don't forget me, okay?
Yeah, you and 150 million other people.
Don't worry about that, okay? I just mentioned my buddies now. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Bye.
Good night. Okay, there we had Melvin Dummar, man. I love that story. I loved the movie when I was a kid, and I've been looking forward to getting this guy on the show. So listen, guys, thank you all. Good night, and I'll see you next week.